1:30, May 21, 2025, the CDBG Citizens Advisory Committee will start. Call to order. I would like roll call, please, and we'll start down here at this end.
Ginger Cutting here.
John Paris here.
Janie Evans here.
Betsy Howe here.
And Marianne Suttles. So with that, we've got discussion and action items. The first one will be the minutes from the April 23 meeting. I'm sure everybody has covered those minutes. Any discussion? I need a motion to accept those minutes.
I motion to accept those minutes. This is Janie Evans.
Betsy Howe, second.
It's been moved in second. All those in favor, please raise their hand. And it passes unanimously. Presentation and discussion regarding program year 2025 annual action plan, allocation and adjustments. And Mike, I'll turn this over to you.
All right. Yes, ma'am. Madam Chair, committee members, this meeting, we have a couple of agenda items. The first one, as stated, is looking at the annual action plan. Some good news. We did get our HUD allocation of, let me make sure I get the right amount to you, $275,024, which is a lot compared to what we've got in the past. So last year, I believe it was around 269, and before that, it was in the 250s. So, good news, good news. And with that information, now we have to reallocate the money, how we designated it. So, couple of things. Let me just run through, make sure I'm on track on my PowerPoint. Okay. So there's the amount, the new breakdown per percentage, administration at 20%, public service cap, again, we can't go over that 15%, that provides us with now $41,254, and then the construction piece at $178,766 to bring out the total to $275,24. This first slide is just looking at the public service. I went ahead and did this, of course, open to committee feedback. What I did was the top three that the committee had selected for funding, I maxed those out. And to the full amount, as you see, the total, the sum of those three at $40,392 is less than the cap. It had a remainder of $862. That can be, my suggestion to the committee is to add that to the construction. But again, it's open for discussion. We can't fund over what one of these organizations requested. Madam Chair.
Madam Chair, I have a question. What was number 4 on our list?
Number 4. I should have that information. I can pull that up right now. Just give me 1 second to find it.
So to make a note, we have Board Member Jim Howard coming in. And Jim, welcome. We're going to catch you up real quick. Ginger, would you repeat your question so Jim will know what we're waiting for?
I was asking what was number 4 on the public non-construction, because we have, yeah, we have extra.
I can go back to the previous.
Think-
I know it was, I'm sorry, it was like Nature Niños, but let me go to the previous. I should have done this in the first place.
You want me to do that for you, Mike?
I'm almost there. What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna bring up the previous CAC meeting that has the breakdown.
Yeah, that's in the FinRev.
I have it in the, because I don't know if I put it in the,
give them more than what they asked for. So Michael had suggested that we put it into construction, but Ginger asked what number 4 was on the non-construction to see if that made sense to give it to them instead. So that's what he's doing, is trying to find that, who number 4 was. There it is.
okay. Sorry, it took a minute. It looks like NACOG, the workforce seminar workshop that they were asking money for, that was, the Niños was number 5. This is just the ranking, overall ranking. So Nature Niños was number 5, then United Way, and then Village of Hope.
Thank you, Michael. I adjust my thought process to move that money to the construction.
Okay. Let me jump.
So any other discussion on moving that excess to construction projects? So now, Michael, we look at those construction projects and decide how to divide that.
Yeah, just a second. Let me just pull this up. I might need just to make it smooth here, a motion on that public service, that new cap, new allocation. Let me go ahead.
Michael, I move that we we take those top 3 and go ahead and give them exactly what they're asking for, and then allocate that 862 to the construction fund.
I second that. This is Janie.
Not by very much.
Do you want me to, I can go back, Madam Chair, to the spreadsheet, see how, the only one that got the full amount for the public service was the diaper bank. That was fully funded at $5,392. But People Who Care New Horizon were under their request. I just maxed them all out, and I can go back to the previous amounts if you'd like.
So with that being said, we need to decide where we're going to put this money, this 862, correct?
Right, it'll just move to construction. And then
All right.
the next slide, after y'all vote on public service allocation, it is working on the construction piece.
All right, so
So I think,
I just suggested that we cap out the 3 top ones, that we fund all those, and then we move the 862 to the construction account.
So that's your motion. Do I have a second on Ginger's motion? So Janie with second. Vote on that. All those in favor, raise your hand. Motion passes unanimously. Moving on to the next one.
All right, so this is going to get a little bit more complicated. And I'm going to bring up the spreadsheet like we did the other day. So hopefully that'll help us get to where we need to go. With that shift of the little bit over $800, we have $14,628 to allocate, okay? What you see on the screen is all the funding amounts from the last meeting where y'all allocated the $250,000 total. Now we gotta move that total of amount of $165,000 up to $179,628. So I'm going to bring up the spreadsheet so we can actually kind of do this in real time.
Madam,
Yes.
I just wanted to bring your attention to the request from Boys and Girls Club. We had talked about completely funding their fencing program. That was actually a $30,000 request, not $35,000. So I think with the intent of completing a project with them, we could actually pull out $5,000, complete their project, and that gives us $5,000 more.
Discussion on pulling that 5.
Madam Chair. Great idea. Yeah, I have a thought. It is absolutely. And if you look at our top 3 that we concluded of what we need, we're looking at housing, we're looking at transportation, and we're looking at food. And I think that when we look at those, I question what we decided when we did that ADA bathroom. Now, I go back and question that. And I really do. I question why we did that. And I think I was the spearhead behind getting that through. I don't remember, but okay. So, but I think that with that in mind, I like the idea to pull that 5,000 out. That is my opinion, and make that a nice, complete item with the Boys and Girls Club, and then having that additional funds for something else.
I'm zooming in here. So so now what it looks like, again, and I'm just filling these numbers as y'all go through the discussion, give you an idea where we're at. We're trying to get to that number here.
We're trying to get to what number, Michael?
I'm sorry.
79?
Yes, ma'am. So this 55,000 needs to get to 179. And we can go down the list if that works. The committee decided on 50,000 for the ADA bathroom. Is that something that the committee would like to stay the same, or up it, or do something different, and then just keep on going down the list here?
So if I'm hearing you right, we have 55,000 to allocate to other projects right now.
Yeah, let me, I'll do the math here.
No, we don't have that.
I have a question. So, Michael, if we revisited the ADA bathroom based on our conclusion of our findings, we could change that figure, correct?
So the applicants have been notified that money has been awarded. Okay, so the expectation is, they don't know the exact amount because they knew that everything was in process, but they are aware that they are receiving money. Funding.
So give me a total. What are we looking at?
So right now, what's been allocated is 55,000 with the new monies. We have 124 left. Again, as we fill in these cells, that number is going to continue to go down. It's just how much you want to move those numbers. So, yes.
If we go with what we decided our particular points that we all came up with, which was housing, food, transportation. If we did those first and looked at funding to what we thought was good for those first and then go backwards, so leave off the 88 bathroom until we're done with the other ones.
I don't agree to that, Ginger. You can't. You have allotted at the last meeting X amount. Now, this excess has to go to these organizations. Are you going to pick the ones that we selected? Are you going to go to something else? You've got X amount to spend. And I think the discussion is, what other nonprofits are we looking at?
So I'm not looking to go off this list. I'm not looking to divert off this list. I absolutely will. I believe in these are the organizations that we should be funding as we committed to do so, and they've been notified. Perhaps not the entire 30,000 for the ADA bathroom or the 50,000 for the ADA. Perhaps not if they weren't aware of what they received. Maybe we need to go in and we need to look at starting with Meals on Wheels and play with numbers a little bit and see if we funded that project.
Madam Chair, this is John Paris. You should remember that I was opposed to anything for ADA. And I made that statement a couple of times. But I'm also opposed to going back and changing what we agreed to and why we agreed to it. I was in the minority. I accept that. I don't have a problem with that. I think as we allocated these funds to these groups, we need to leave it where it was and add the 14,628 or whatever it is. That's in my opinion.
I agree.
I agree.
And this is Jim Howell, and I agree. And I'm not afraid of offending the Parks and Recreation Director, but we've already went down this road and made the turn. What's done is done. And I felt like I supported this project because if it wasn't for this $50,000, it's just not going to happen. And it was a great presentation they made. It was very convincing, and yeah.
Betsy?
This is Betsy Howe. I'd just like to confirm that my recommendation to bring the Boys and Girls Club contribution down to $30,000 is actually a correction. That we are, our intent is to help them complete or get them to completion of that fencing, and it was actually more of an error that it was at a $35,000 level.
Okay, so then,
So, do we need a motion to get this started?
No, I think we, Madam Chair, I believe we just go through this spreadsheet, and once we've gotten to the number, then a motion at the end here. Starting with the ADA bathroom, what I'm hearing from the committee is keeping it at 50,000. Okay. The next one is Meals on Wheels. Funded 15,500, didn't reach their total request. Leave it up to the committee for discussion.
Who wants to start the Meals on Wheels?
Jim Howell, I'm going to recuse myself from Meals on Wheels discussion.
That's pretty common in this chamber. They did that before.
Madam Chair, this is John Paris. Meals on Wheels, and you remember my comment before, I was I was really pretty proud of what we did with what we had. We helped a lot of people where we could have, lumped all this and helped fewer people. We helped a lot of people. Meals on Wheels is I think, a prime target of what we should be looking at. So if we're going to bump anything, in my opinion, we probably ought to take a look at Meals on Wheels.
I second that.
Do you have an amount, John?
Well, we can't bump it over. I'm sorry, John Paris. We can't bump it over 23,430. And we gave them 15,500, correct? What if we just give them the 23,430? I move that we give Meals on Wheels a bump to get them up to $23,430.
Is there a second?
I second that.
Or discussion? So, with no discussion, those in favor, raise your hands. And that's unanimous.
Okay.
How's your math going, Mike?
It's going. We'll probably work through this spreadsheet and at the end of it, make our adjustments where needed. But we're moving in the right direction. The next one is Boys and Girls Club. If anything else wants to be done with that, it is currently at 30,000.
Michael, this is Janie. If I remember correctly, that was specifically just for the fence? And
That is
this
correct.
fully funds the fence? Then why were they asking, help me remember, why were they asking for 100?
They wanted to pave and do some other.
That's right, okay.
Okay. Ginger,
Madam Chair, I recommend that we adjust the Boys and Girls Club, leave it at the 30,000.
motion? Do we have second on that?
I
Betsy Howell,
second that.
Betsy, you're the second. Any discussion with that dollar amount? And all those in favor? Aye. Those opposed? We're moving on.
Okay, the next one is Agape House, funded at $22,750. What they fully requested in their application was $24,800. What would the committee like to do?
Madam Chair, I recommend that we fully fund the Agape House at $24,800.
A second.
Second, Jim Howell.
And discussion. And with that, the motion been made, seconded. Those in favor, raise your hand. And it passes unanimously.
Okay, the last one, the cupboard that has been fully funded. Last one is Launchpad, which was funded at $16,750. I'm going to go ahead, plug that number in. We have $9,648 left. Does the committee want to apply the rest of it to the Launchpad project or do something else with that funding?
Open for discussion.
What else would we be allowed to do?
Well, there's a couple of projects in there that haven't been funded or increased funding. The committee could add it to existing projects funding. There's the Public Works project that was not funded at all. It could be applied to that, or the remaining amount could just go to the Launchpad project.
Madam Chair, Michael, this is John Paris. I'll think of it here in a minute. I'll come back to you when I remember what I was going to say.
I would like to pull in Public Works. I know at that time there was no interest in it, but they still had a presentation. They were still in a neighborhood. It was a low to moderate situation. This at least shows that we're trying to do something with these neighborhoods. So with that discussion,
Madam Chair,
Ginger,
the whole intent that we talked about the other day was nonprofit organizations and transportation, which Public Works would be part of, food and housing. Yeah. If you look at that, then it would be towards transportation, would be Public Works. It's not a nonprofit. It's not a nonprofit. It is a for-profit city, and it's not a nonprofit. There's so much to be. I think that the nonprofit, this is where, when we had those applicants that were not, they were for-profit, they weren't given any opportunity. I just think that's what we're supposed to be doing is with HUD is nonprofit.
and your statement is taken, but we're in a situation right now that we didn't have at that time. This is where we are. This is what we're trying to continue to fund. And so, any other discussion?
Madam Chair, Michael, this is John Paris. I do remember now. The center. It was determined by HUD that their request was not appropriate.
That's
for
correct.
That funding.
For the chairs and tables.
And they were made aware of that.
They were.
And there's nothing in there that I remember of them requesting for anything other than that. So we couldn't say, hey, here's $9,000, do something you're supposed to do with it.
No, sir. No.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's done.
I think that HUD would appreciate us working for any low to moderate income, regardless of whether it is, a funding an Agape House or funding Public Works. So I'm in favor of going ahead and giving that to Public Works. I think it might benefit us in the long run with the dollar amounts we get in the future.
Okay, let's get this on. I move that we fund the remaining amount of money to the Public Works Department, which was $9,648. I need a second, then we can have a discussion.
I second that.
All right, we're open.
What happened to the Prescott Community Covered Food Bank?
Any other discussion, Jim? All right. With that being said, I would like to vote on that motion and second for Public Works. All those in favor? Those abstaining or no? We have a 1 no vote, unanimous. The major votes count, and so it looks like that money goes to public service.
Record the no vote. Ginger Cutting.
Please.
Ginger Cutting, no.
Thank you.
So how are we now?
We're there. We're there. So full allocation. And no motion is needed at this time. You already did the motion for each item. So we are done with the allocation, the new allocation. So good job.
Michael, do you make that then public to those organizations?
I do. It's still, this is the HUD allocation that's still an estimate. We get our for real number in October. Now, it hasn't changed from this number that we get. Usually we get this number in March. So, but what I understand, it has some years come in 1,000 more, 1,000 less. So this is pretty much it. So a lot of hesitation with letting them know exact numbers until we get through the plan. HUD's actually said everything's good to go, and we're still expecting delays throughout the year. So that's kind of where we're at.
Okay, looks like we're going to presentation discussion of the 2025 action plan.
Okay, let's see. Well, the next item here for discussion, I got some PowerPoints. We're talking about the consolidated plan and where we're at. As you know, just finally got our allocations a little bit later than usual, so timeframes have been pushed. I'm going to show you, let me see, given this slide before, where we're at in the 5-year consolidated process. Where strategic plan, annual action plan, what y'all just did was a big piece to help me complete the annual action plan, so I know the exact allocations.
Michael, quickly before we get into this, I want to make notification. Councilman Brendan Montoya came into the meeting and is present.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So today, we're going to discuss consolidated plan. I'm going to go over the results of the committee survey, the paper survey that we did. And let me go to the correct slide. So this is what I got from the CAC survey. What you're seeing up here on the slides is actually different than what you have in your packet. Made adjustments. We had one member get theirs in. My fault for the late submission, but we made sure everybody was heard in the survey. So broken down just as it was in the survey, the first part is the housing needs. Workforce housing development and support was ranked the highest at 4.3. Then we had ADA for seniors and disabled individuals at 3.5. Homeless prevention through rental assistance at 3.1. Maintenance and rehab, we're talking minor home repair, ranked at 3. Those are our housing needs. Public facilities, infrastructures, improvement to facilities serving vulnerable populations ranked the highest. We had ADA again in public spaces and neighborhood infrastructure in LMI areas. Any questions about these results? Again, requesting on my end an open discussion from the committee so I can continue to collect input to put into the plan.
Madam Chair, I have one thought. We did not allocate any funds this time to the maintenance, the existing, the one that,
Minor home repair program.
thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Why not?
They are fully funded. Currently, they have a balance of about $90,000. So, working pretty closely with Sherry Heine, Chamber of Commerce Foundation, and it's really started to pick up. And we have a project that's actually ending today, and we're getting a lot of calls. So expect the money to be spent down a year from now and then back in front of the committee. Okay. And I can jump in between the slides as well. The other part of the CAC survey was public services. Transportation ranks the highest there, no surprise, along with senior services, mental health services, and then basic needs for low-income families.
I just wanted to make a little asterisk on transportation services. I think we were very impressed and, in fact, gave some money to organization that does door-to-door service for seniors and does it with volunteer assistance. That is my interpretation of transportation services for the elderly. Having looked at the city's long-range plan, I in no way want my transportation concerns to be construed as wanting public transportation scheduled service. I see those as two completely different services, and just wanted to make that distinction. Just a little side note, I served as a transportation planner in a county about this size back in my early days, and I think it can be very dangerous to construe concerns over transportation and how different people interpret that.
So I'll speak to that, Madam Chair, if that's all right. So again, with the cap being at 15% for public service for CDBG, not for public transit, but for those non-for-profits like New Horizons, people who care that are in that space, traditionally that's how it's worked. So, and there's nothing in the consolidated plan that discusses public transit in that way with these funds.
Then how do we discern for the general public what transportation means? Because it could mean either one. It could mean volunteers picking people up and taking them to doctor's appointments. But do we not again think that the city needs to step in there and maybe provide some kind of transportation as well for seniors? Like a small bus or something that would pick people up? Because that would also be construed as transportation.
Let me do my best on this question. For this funding specific, because HUD wants this more towards infrastructure and construction, I don't think, and we can make it very clear in the consolidated plan how we've used it in the past and how we plan to use it in the future. And it's specific to those non-for-profits that fill that space, that need, if that makes sense. Yeah.
I could piggyback on Janie. SIMPO has taken on a public transportation bus out of Prescott Valley, and they've combined, so they will be working there. Chino Valley has theirs, so there are some out there. Mm-hmm. What we do is through the HUD part, but the other is done through county and smaller cities and such.
Thank you.
And CDBG, it's very, very unlikely that we would fund a SIMPO project. This money is specific to Prescott and Prescott only. But good dialogue. I appreciate it. Okay, so, and then the homelessness, emergency shelter facilities and improvements in transitional housing were ranked the highest. Again, it kind of fits of what we've done in the past with this committee, talking Agape House, talking Prescott Area Shelter Service, PASS, Project Aware. And then homeless prevention services and supportive services for homeless populations. Okay. These were the highest and lowest overall priorities. Again, this is a little bit different than what you find in the packet, not that much, but transportation services ranked the highest, not a surprise again. Workforce housing development and support was high. That's definitely a mission of the city to support that kind of infrastructure. Emergency shelters, transitional housing facilities, senior services, ADA, mental health services, homeless prevention services, and then, of course, the lowest overall employee and job training was fairly low. Anything to do with energy efficiency improvements and ownership assistance. Any dialogue or discussion on this slide from the committee?
Madam Chair.
Yes.
Ginger cutting. Betsy, the idea that you came up with at that meeting that we had regarding one application fee, that same application to stay with every possible renter, has stuck with me in my head. And I think that is a brilliant idea that should be made, and we need to take that somewhere. Now, I don't know if this organization or this group can do something with that, but I think that is a possible solution for making it more affordable for renters to find a rental spot, having that same application. I don't know what we can do with that, but I really want that idea to stay in our heads, and as we move forward, maybe sing something in the future.
This is Betsy Howell. I did some research on that and found that everybody has all landlords have their own applications, not standardized in any way. It really does cost them something to request a report on finances and, any legal problems at all. So they really do need to be reimbursed for their time. So perhaps looking at things like Agape House, people who do transitional housing, wondering if they already give some assistance to people in their move into rentals that we could piggyback on. So I think there's still an opportunity to investigate that. But there's also that lingering thing in the back of my brain that says this is what college tuition was all about. You give people money to pay for a bill, and the bill just gets more costly. So I think it's worth delving into, but just to let you know, it is totally non-standardized.
And what you would see with something like that is we put these items in the consolidated plan, and we leave it as open to our nonprofits out there to see these things and bring the committee something. So that's kind of how this process works. The other piece to this, as we move along, speaking with my HUD representative, her suggestion was don't leave anything out, okay? Don't put yourself in a situation where you have to ask for an amendment. So it's going to be, the consolidated plan is going to be fairly broad as we work through it. Okay, key themes. This is coming from the open-ended responses, talking about housing, senior housing support and accessibility, what we're doing with our minor home repair program. A big piece of that, we do a lot of ADA stuff with minor home repair. Workforce housing development. And while we're on that, our workforce housing policy will be in front of the City Council through a study session on May 27th in here if you would like to attend. Rental assistance and application fee help, that was in the responses, and transitional housing support. On public facilities, transportation infrastructure, ADA compliance improvements, senior facilities expansion, talking about our senior center, and LMI neighborhood improvements. Any discussion on this slide? Okay. Moving along, other piece, public services, again, transportation up top, food security, food banks, which we funded this year with Meals on Wheels and the cupboard. Home repair assistance, basic needs for low-income families, like the diaper bank, for example. Homelessness objectives, family-focused emergency shelter. Facility improvements, prevention services, transitional housing support. Okay. These were implementation approaches coming from, again, responses to the survey. Focus on high-impact projects serving the most people. Okay. Enhance partnerships with existing organizations. Maximize impact by supporting volunteer staff programs. People Who Care is a good example of that one. Establish clear prioritization framework for funding decisions. Expand outreach to identify smaller nonprofits for funding. I saw that on a few of the survey responses. I think the best way to do that, and where I come in quite a bit with the outreach, is continue to participate in our continuum of care, the CIP meetings. New non-for-profits are coming into that organization all the time. That's how we can catch them, and also kind of staying in touch with the big guns in the community that have been here for a while, like your Catholic Charities, your CCJs. They're all working together. U.S. vets, for sure. Consider larger projects with multi-year impacts, track progress with regular reviews and comprehensive metrics. Monitoring did come up in the survey. We do that. I do that. That's another huge part of my job, going out to these non-for-profits. I'm not an accountant. I don't do any forensic accounting, but I do go through their processes, to see how they qualify clients to their programs, and how they track those clients through their organizations. Coordinate with animal shelters to address pet-related housing barriers. That came up in the CIP for those that attended there. What do we do? Are there resources out there? I had never thought about it, but it's definitely something, big umbrella, put that into the consolidated plan, see if someone bites, so. Okay. Anything on those? And this, throwing just generic questions to the committee. If any of these questions spur you to discussion, that's great. Again, this is everything I'm hearing. I'm trying to implement, put into our consolidated plan. So it's really this committee's document. So, again, any of those questions, and I did a couple of slides, any of these questions step out or stick out, like to respond, I'm here.
They're just a laundry list of so many.
Yeah, I know.
It's going to be tough to try to pull them down. But I think you have to start with this to try to get into your queue.
Right, and I don't expect, again, it's throwing that big net, and just everything that I'm hearing, whether it's a rental assistant application, I wouldn't have come up with that on my own. So it really helps to hear you guys what's important from what you've been reading, and where you think the CDBG program should go moving forward for the next 5 years.
This is Betsy Howe. I still am very interested in this funding of application projects. So I went as far as that information I shared, but I'm wondering if we could go like to Agape House or other nonprofits that we're familiar with that do transitional housing and ask them about this specific issue, if they deal with it, how they deal with it. Would that be a tasking that we put on you?
Absolutely. I mean, it's already on the task list. I mean, looking for new projects, activities. It would fit, like something like that, just to remember, it seems to be fairly easy to find service projects, right? Like the transportation and, providing pet care, housing, that would fall under service. Unfortunately, that's our smaller bucket. You know what I mean? But all those things that I hear, that's what I will bring up to our local providers as, hey, what about this? Are y'all doing work like this? And could be a future application.
Michael, the city has a low housing committee.
Workforce housing committee.
Workforce housing that HUD is also part of.
There is, and we can get into this, they, through the State Department of Housing, ADO, we have a grant that paid for the needs assessment that's in your packet. The survey which was done was part of that needs assessment. I agree, it wasn't. They did a survey out in Prescott Valley, and they, I think, had close to 1,000 participants. This survey that we got a little bit under 200 Prescott residents, but it was completely paid for by a grant. So, and we look for those grant opportunities. So,
Michael, when you have when you're meeting with those individual organizations, do you have the open-ended question, what are you saying that we haven't already addressed that could be that's something that we could help, like the application, like the animal assistance? What are some of those things? Because some of those people, I would imagine, have seen a lot of the same consistent that they have not necessarily brought to our attention.
It's a good question. Always having conversations with them. I'll give you one that just happened last week. Talking with one of our providers, and for whatever reason, they're getting a big influx of people losing their leases or their rents. They're looking for emergency shelter. Total of 30 individuals came to one shelter. They only had space for 15. They hadn't seen anything like that for a while. Stuff like that happens. So trying to figure out how to respond to stuff like that in a timely manner, or the best way we can. But yes, always having conversations, seeing what they need. And what I'm hearing from them is I'm also implementing into this consolidated plan. So. Is there, looking at these questions, is there anything within that survey, anything that was missed? Is it any problems, any issues? It's okay for me to start moving forward with that. Again, I'm working on this strategy and actually putting all this together. So I just don't want to miss any feedback from the committee.
How can we partner with the workforce housing group? Because so many of our goals with this group are similar to the workforce housing group. I mean, yes, they are different. They do different things. Mm-hmm. As far as building, they're more into the building low-income housing. Mm-hmm. From the meeting that I attended, that was my takeaway. But some things I think are so similar that it might benefit us to coordinate with them in certain areas. What do you think of that?
I think that's a great question. I think that's definitely something that hopefully we're able to move towards with the city. I'm the staff liaison, or one of the staff liaisons with the workforce housing. So I'm always thinking CDBG and how CDBG could possibly help, even though we're very limited on how much money we have. I think a big piece is going to be what the council does with the workforce housing policy that's presented to them on May 27th. So, in that policy is a lot of proactive engagement strategies, how we're going to make this workforce housing thing happen. We'll see if council wants to move forward with some of that. If they do, then I think there's going to be more of an opportunity for a committee like this to help. Workforce housing, affordable housing is going to be in the con plan, in the consolidated plan as well.
Would we be able to have someone come and do 10, 15 minutes for us?
Yes, Madam Chair, absolutely. I can bring that up to the workforce housing, and I think they would appreciate that, being able to talk to this group.
And this is Janie. I would really suggest if any of you can make that meeting on May 27th, it's really a good group, really enlightening, and maybe between all of us, we can figure out how we can work together instead of being so separate.
Right. So this is a very mature committee. It's been around for a while. It runs smooth. Workforce housing is a new committee. They've had a lot of growing pains. They're actually getting a bunch of new committee members. So again, I see it. We'll see where it goes on the May 27th study session. But there's a lot of motivated people that want to do something. Oh, here you go.
Madam Chair, if I may, Chelsea Walton, Community Development Director. Just to piggyback on what Mike mentioned, and thank you, Janie, for bringing that up. The way the committees would interface is probably more in line with projects that might come up down the road. Right now, they're focused on policy and writing coming up with packets of information for outside sources on how to connect them with the right resources. I would see CDBG interfacing with Workforce Housing Committee should the Workforce Housing Committee come with a project and there be some sort of partnership, and then being an applicant for CDBG funds for construction. So at this point in time, I don't see a lot of overlap other than being aware of what each other are working on and how the policies and goals and strategies they've come up with can be either reciprocated or in some way supported by CDBG. But since this body is about dispersing funds for that, that would be something they come to you with a specific project that can then use funds in the future to get workforce housing actually in the ground. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, let me see what other, and then just some more discussion questions. Anything that comes up there? You know, here's one that I had, which I know that what I have heard from the committee is a bit of resistance towards city infrastructure projects brought on by Public Works or Parks and Rec. I did want to see if we could discuss that a little bit because it is potentially a really big part of our consolidated plan and what we can do with this money. So the question I had was which specific city infrastructure projects should be prioritized to address the needs identified in this survey? And I put up what we've done in the past: parks, sidewalks, of course, the trail at the Nature Center. Again, any feedback's appreciated.
I think you're going to have to sell that to some of the people on this board,
Okay.
because they're looking at transportation, they're looking at the nonprofits. I see a part of it because someone's going to have to pay for it, whether it be us on our own or other. But we've done those projects before. They were welcomed. Everybody was happy that they got done. And there were quite a few of them. So that's going to be up to you.
Is there a good example? Like, I wasn't here for like the Dexter sidewalk project. How did that, was that a good project? Like, what did
Chelsea, they did some work on Goodwin. Didn't they do sidewalks and such on?
By the VFW?
Yes. I mean, there are some good projects that we could get onto, but it's going to be hard to sell everybody on it.
Okay.
Madam Chair, and that someone is probably me. And a lot of times I think in these low to moderate income areas, we have people who are not low to moderate income. And I don't think that it necessarily affects, it's a direct reflection of where the HUD money should go. I think there's a lot of opportunity that these nonprofits specifically work with low to moderate income. But in some of these areas, we have a lot of homeowners, we have a lot of investors, we have a lot of Airbnbs, second homes, third homes, that they not necessarily, I don't know if it's the best use of the money that's being done for HUD.
Okay.
Let me ask this real quick and I'll be done. How do you separate that, Ginger? How do you get into a neighborhood and say this is an Airbnb and down the street is a second home, but you got 5 in the middle that have issues with flooding and with sewer and with other kinds of things? How do you cherry pick that?
You're exactly right. You really can't cherry pick it. When you're looking at a general project, I really don't think, unless you looked at those homeowners and did an analysis which would create a really big survey or do some investigation to see if they are homeowners, if they do have debt on the property, what their financial situation is, and do some interviews. I just think in general, I know this area pretty well. I know that there is a lot of home ownership in the area. And when we have $10,000 and we can take that $10,000 and give it to an organization who clearly works with 95% low to moderate income, or then you work with an organization who maybe 50%, maybe 35% are low to moderate income, it doesn't make sense for me. I would rather give it to the one who works with them.
So they just need to be vetted? Someone, all right. Thank you, Jim. Next.
Yeah, Jim Howell here, and it's Cisco and Ebert. I'm on the other side of this. What holds me back from allocating more to the public works for projects is just what we have. It's insufficient. I've been in other places. We had $500,000, $1 million. So then you had enough money that you could build a sewer system, you could install curb, gutter, and sidewalk, especially adjacent to schools. And I don't care really if the houses are owned and they're rented. Kids are kids when they're going to school and using those sidewalks. So I've experienced a lot of benefits from that. And a lot of times these are projects that are lower on the priority list for the city. But when it gets down to the heart, there's much benefit to these projects. So I'm a believer, but we just don't have enough money to make a go of it, to me.
I would say if we are looking at a project that we have such a little amount of money that's being applied towards, in this instance, we've got $9,800 being applied towards a $100,000 budget. And if you remember, that budget was only for the investigative work. So that was just for the investigative work. So then they had another 100,000 they were looking for to do the job or something like that. So my thought process is that is a nickel in the entire scenario. And before we throw that nickel in, because that's a precious nickel to some organizations, let's look at really, is it going to be dog-eared towards that particular project? And what is the city going to be able to do to make up that 95%?
Betsy Howe, I think given all of these arguments as well, that the prices seem to be so high for the amount of money we have to spread around. And another high priority for me is how much volunteer support is in these nonprofits. So we're not paying somebody's salary as much as enhancing an organization that utilizes volunteer manpower and really spreads, we get more bang for the buck.
Okay, Michael.
Right. No, that's excellent. I really appreciate the feedback and the dialogue, and taking it all in. Okay, that's kind of wrapping it up on this piece. If there's anything else before I go into staff announcements regarding the consolidated plan and where we're at.
Madam Chair, Michael, when can I give my 5 cents on the Prescott survey?
Right. We can go ahead and do that now. That survey was part of the needs assessment. The needs assessment was in your packet. So if you'd like, yes.
Thank you. Ginger Cutting, I just really wanted to give my opinion of this survey. I think this was an absolute waste of time and money. The averages that came back that I took away from it is that 69% of the people who took this Prescott survey own their own home. That doesn't fit our criteria. 56% were female, 88% were white. Median income, this is the one that really got me, is $92,900. And I think it was lovely to ask people, but I think the time it took you to put this together was not necessary. I don't know if you did it, but
No, I didn't.
okay, or maybe you employed someone, but somebody had to go through those, whatever we paid for it. And I know it was a grant. Again, we could use that money in other areas. But I think that was not your target, was the city of Prescott population. So in my opinion, it was a waste. Now, the one that came back that was the AZ balance of state, continuum of care, Yavapai County, That
Yes,
was
this-
fascinating. And that one told me, just an interesting statistics, that white men with illnesses live in the woods with no income, and they've lived there for more than 3 years. That's exactly what it said.
You're talking about the point in time survey, is that correct? Yes.
Look at the statistical information, that's exactly what it came back with. It was very interesting. And I think that is not necessarily our particular people either. I think it's somewhere in the middle.
If I could give my 2 cents to your 5 cents, I found in encouraging people to take the survey that a lot of people who probably fit the stereotype of being more affluent in this area had experiences that were very valuable. I remember a conversation with a couple, they were skiers. And they had an experience up in Copper, whatever, in Colorado, where they had workforce housing and they saw it working successfully in the area. So I think these people may not have personal input, but they have experiential, maybe observing input that could be helpful. So, you know.
And just with that survey, they used it in the development of the housing needs assessment, which is in your packet. And you'll notice if you go through that needs assessment, they didn't refer to it all that much. Again, I think just the data that was being collected wasn't that extensive, unfortunately, and it's really hard to do surveys, and keep it cost effective.
And Madam Chair, one more point on that. Perhaps the exit interview with the Agape House or PASS, or before you go into transitional, maybe that is where this information needs to be collected to give to us.
For sure. Okay, any last comments on consolidated plan?
We're good.
All right, staff announcements, I appreciate that. I'm going to request one last kind of emergency meeting in a couple weeks regarding the consolidated plan when it's fully in its draft, like that's completely done, just to get everybody's feedback. Could be a pretty quick meeting, but I don't want to submit it to public comment. It has to go through a 30-day public comment period before going to the city council we're targeting July 8th. Tuesday, July 8th is when it would go up to the council for approval to HUD. Consolidated plan includes the first year annual action plan. So the date I'm requesting is Thursday, June 5th at 11 a.m. If that is possible and if it doesn't work, I can look around and probably coordinate via email.
We'll do our best.
Okay. That was it. So, okay, cool. I was going to do it early, 11. So, and would just need a quorum just to get, I'm going to try to make sure you have the full draft of the consolidated plan, which is going to be pretty heavy duty. And before that meeting, you have a big portion of it already with you in that packet. Just, last check before we send it out. So that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Think that time, unless there's any other comments, we've got a date. Thank you for attending. I think we covered some really good projects again, and it looks like are going to adjourn.
I believe it's 2:40.
And we're adjourned.
Awesome. Thank you. Really good work. I really appreciate it.
Good work on your part.
Thanks, guys.
We're going to get this done.
Yes. Yes.